Check out our streaming schedule for this week. We stream every single day on this channel, talking about all things sports history. And now with college basketball season really getting in the swing of things, we are doing a lot of college basketball streams, commentating the action as we get one step closer to March Madness. So join me every night as we call the best of college basketball. And now, on with our feature presentation. I think it goes without saying that the number one rule of journalism, or one of them at least, is to confirm your sources. You do not want to say anything on the air without actually confirming the thing. With rumors, it's a different story, but with actual journalism regarding something serious, such as a death or a major automobile accident, speculation is not enough. If you hear something in passing, that is most definitely not enough to go on the air and confirm it as real news. Maybe something got lost in translation. Maybe the person who said the remark was joking about something. Maybe the person was talking about something completely different and a different person with that same name, especially if the name is a common one. You get the idea. If I'm walking around the streets of Kansas City and I hear the words Patrick Mahomes and hospital close together with each other in a sentence while standing at a crosswalk, I can't just go on the air and say that Patrick Mahomes is at the hospital. I need to actually verify the story. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe he's visiting a Make-A-Wish kid. Maybe he threw a hospital ball. Maybe the word hospital was never even said and I completely misheard it. Confirming your sources when it comes to journalism is paramount. Because today, we're going to talk about a man who, let's just say, did not do that one bit. Because this man right here that you've been watching this entire time is Tim McDonald, a safety on the Phoenix Cardinals. And we're going to talk more about just how good he was for the team in just a little bit. But in 1989, he was involved in the center of a giant controversy that turned out to be completely inaccurate, and a great example of why you always need to verify your sources. All because one journalist heard something in passing and decided, screw it, let's run with this. 'Tis better to be second and right than it is to be first and dead wrong. And man, did we have some drama in the desert as a result of this. Because this is the story behind Tim McDonald and one of the worst examples of journalism in NFL history. Before I get into the incident at hand, make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. We post every single day about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, and we have a live stream every single day as well. So if you like that sort of stuff and like learning more about stories that you probably never heard of before, then this is the place for you. Every bit of support helps, so I would really appreciate your like and subscription down below. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. And with that in mind, let's talk about what was, from a journalism standpoint, disaster in the desert. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand the main player involved in our story, which is none other than this man right here, Tim McDonald. When people talk about some of the most underrated safeties in NFL history, McDonald is one of those names that was super underrated. He played in an era with some of the greatest safeties of all time, like Ronnie Lott and Steve Atwater. But McDonald was a heck of a player who was consistent and was a ball hawk throughout the late 1980s and the 1990s. By the time McDonald's career was done, he was a 6-time Pro Bowler, making it to 5 straight All-Star games from 1991 to 95, and he was a champion in 1994 as a member of the San Francisco 49ers, when he helped that team win Super Bowl 29. McDonald finished his career with 40 interceptions, including 7 during the 1989 season, which was 4th in the NFL. And while he never received an AP First Team All-Pro nomination, he did receive 4 AP Second Team All-Pro noms. On top of that, McDonald was a surefire tackler and could deliver the boom when needed. In 1988, for example, not only did he have well over 100 tackles, but he forced a league-high 4 fumbles. Long story short, McDonald was a very good safety who, while not a Hall of Famer, would definitely be a pick for Hall of Very Good and a pick for one of the most underrated safeties in NFL history, considering the fact that his best years were buried with a bad Cardinals team and the fact that he was playing in the same era in the shadow of some of the greatest safeties of all time. In other words, it was clear that heading into the 1989 season, coming off of that 1988 campaign where he started all but one game and had 4 forced fumbles, that the third-year man and the former second-round pick from the 1987 class was a person of interest and was a man that many Cardinal fans were paying attention to, because without him, that defense did not stand a chance. On July 31st, 1989, in the heat of training camp, the Cardinals were practicing blocking drills. And tasked with the responsibility of blocking McDonald, as in the man you've been watching this whole time, was none other than running back Lydell Carr. Unlike McDonald, Carr was fighting for a spot on the roster and was trying to stick in the NFL after being drafted by the New Orleans Saints in the 4th round of the 1988 NFL Draft and never playing a game there. And on paper, Carr was a powerful back. He was 6'1" and weighed 226 pounds, so he actually weighed more than McDonald did. For a guy like Carr, you're probably not going to make the roster off of your running ability. They've already got that covered on paper with guys like Stump Mitchell and Earl Farrell. You're going to make it based on what you can do as a blocker and what you can do on special teams, which also stems from blocking abilities. Everyone had the green light to go hard in this practice, and that's exactly what Carr did, because on this blocking drill on July 31st, he absolutely flattened Tim McDonald. Obviously, there is no footage of this, seeing as this was a random play from a July practice session in the 1980s, but the hit was big enough that it put the coaching staff on notice that this Carr kid might be alright. If he was able to flatten Tim McDonald, one of the best tackling safeties and one of the hardest hitting safeties in all of football, he might be someone worth keeping around. And it was such a big hit that after practice, a Cardinal official was asked what happened on that play with Tim McDonald, the man you've been watching this whole time, and Lydell Carr, to which the Cardinal official responded by saying he had a car wreck. Nice little joke on the situation, and a good play on words, seeing as that was his last name. Obviously, McDonald was going to be fine. You're not making a joke like that if he's not okay. But it was just a fun little quip by a Cards official, considering the fact that Carr laid the hit, as it showed how pleased the staff was with the intensity of the practices thus far in the hot July desert heat. Everyone had a nice laugh about the situation, and in a normal world, that should be the end of our story, right? Player gets hit in a blocking drill, everyone's okay, a team official comments on the play, jokes about the situation, makes a play on words, and we can move on. But this seemingly mundane story was only just beginning. Because, you see, someone overheard those comments by a Cardinal official about Tim McDonald and decided to run with that story, but in a completely different direction. The reporter, in this case, was Steve Garagiola. If that last name sounds familiar, it should if you are a baseball fan. His father, Joe, was a catcher for 9 seasons in Major League Baseball and won the 1946 World Series as a member of the St. Louis Cardinals. His brother, Joe Jr., was the general manager for the Arizona Diamondbacks when they first started out, and his roster construction helped guide the team to the 2001 World Series, where they defeated the New York Yankees in the first and to date only professional sports title by a team in the state of Arizona in the Big Four leagues. I actually know quite a few people who had a class that was taught by Joe Jr. At this time in 1989, Steve Garagiola was reporting for Channel 10 in Arizona, known today as Fox 10 Phoenix, but back in 1989, it was a CBS affiliate. Steve had also just gotten to Arizona, as he spent the rest of the 1980s working at WXYZ in Detroit. So this was Steve's first training camp with the Cardinals. And when he heard the news about Tim McDonald getting into a car wreck, he took it quite literally. He didn't realize that the Cardinal official was just quipping about Lydell Carr. I'm not even sure he realized that the Cardinals had a player on their roster named Lydell Carr. Garagiola heard McDonald and Carr wreck and assumed, oh crap, maybe the best player on the Cardinals is badly injured because of an automobile accident. because to lead off the 5 o'clock news in the sports section of Channel 10 on July 31st, 1989, Cardinal fans were devastated and mortified to find out that their star safety, Tim McDonald, had been involved in an automobile accident. The news was then repeated on the air at 6 o'clock and at 10 o'clock, just in case you didn't hear it the first 2 times. The only problem? Yeah, as you can probably tell, Tim McDonald was not involved in a car wreck. He got hit by a player whose last name was Carr. A Cardinal official quipped about this while reporters laughed, and Garagiola and the producer in charge at Channel 10 didn't realize this was a joke about an incident that happened in practice, and they just heard the news in passing and decided to run with it. Big mistake. Big freaking mistake. This is why context is important. Not only was there no car wreck, but Tim McDonald was completely fine. The news on Channel 10, which was reported on not once, not twice, but 3 times, mind you, was not even remotely true. And when Cardinal officials became baffled upon seeing the story on the air, and when it became clear that Channel 10 had egg on its face, yeah, the result was not pretty. Say, Garagiola, we made a mistake in going with it without checking sources. It was a bad mistake. It shouldn't have happened. It was an embarrassing screw-up. It's my fault. I'm the reporter here. And obviously, in what turned out to be the world's worst game of telephone, something happened along the chain of command that should have said, wait a second, we shouldn't run this story. A producer tried to find out if McDonald actually got involved in a car crash, but the producer couldn't get a hold of the Cardinals' public relations department. So instead of putting the story on hold, the producer said to run with it. Garagiola attempted to check the story for himself after getting word from the producer, but he couldn't verify it. And instead of just scrapping the story entirely, he decided to run with it. You would think that this would be a pretty easy story to verify, even if you couldn't get a hold of the Cardinals. All you have to do is contact the local police department. Every news station is aligned to the police department for obvious reasons. Just contact the ones in Phoenix and Tempe and Scottsdale and whatnot, and ask if there was an automobile accident involving Tim McDonald. Heck, just an automobile accident by itself isn't even newsworthy. If the accident was just a fender bender, that's not making the news. Just insane to me that there were multiple instances here where someone could have halted the story and said, we're not running this without confirmation because there are still so many holes and questions with this story, and no one did. For whatever reason, no one did. No one called the police, no one got a hold of the Cardinals, no one got an injury report, nothing. In their effort to be the first, Channel 10 became the worst because they were the only ones to run this story, and it's not hard to see why they were the only ones to run it, because it was completely and utterly made up. If I ran a story right now that said Joe Burrow is retiring, there's a reason no one else is running with that story, because I just made it up. And seeing as Garagiola was reporting for one of the first times all season with the Cardinals, seeing as he was in Detroit for the past decade, and this was, for a lot of people, his first impression in the desert, yeah, not good. Not good in the slightest bit. Now, to be fair to Garagiola, he learned from his mistake and went on to have an incredibly successful newscasting career after the gaffe involving the man he'd been watching this whole time, as Garagiola would eventually go back to Detroit in 1995 and be a newscaster for WDIV, spearheading the station's coverage of the 1996 Olympics and being there 30 years later. Anytime you can spend nearly half a century as a newscaster in some capacity, including 30 consecutive years in one of the largest media markets in the country for one of the largest stations in the country, you're doing something right. But this mistake involving Tim McDonald is one that he'd like to have back for sure. Let this be a lesson to all aspiring journalists and newscasters and whatnot. If I can give you 2 pieces of advice, number 1, don't fight in a Starbucks. Just don't do it. Number 2, do not run stories without getting confirmation. Check your sources. Especially if it's something serious and not lighthearted at all, like a car wreck, make sure you know the facts before you say it to the world. There is no crime in being second. There is a crime in being wrong. Just because you hear something in passing doesn't mean anything. It could be an unreliable source, or something that got lost in translation, or something along those lines. And the incident involving this man you've been watching this whole time in Tim McDonald is a prime example of that. Because in 1989, when it came to reporting on the car wreck, Channel 10 wished they could put the car in reverse. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.